So I've been allowed to introduce myself. and I need an introduction, but I'm not going to give you one because I'd rather have the poems do it for me. And I'm so pleased to see the hood here, and also so many friends from other hoods. And this reading is about the hood. It's actually about the people and places and things of Greater Simsbury. We are expanding our reach to the world. And I'm doing this as your poet laureate here and the state's poet laureate, and I was installed the other day, and I'm feeling a little bit like Seabiscuit lying down in his stall before being told he better get out there and race. They haven't lowered the boom yet, but I expect I'm going to get told to do something. So anyway, I'm having a lot of fun. And I am going to introduce you to a whole raft of local characters. And the first of these local characters is a poet with whom I lived happily for several years on our estate. And some of you may recognize the poet. The title of the poem is Small Token. Small Token. Each time I pass the barn this morning, Hobo has laid out her kill in a different pose, seduction arranged and rearranged. Now the mole is draped across the flagstone path, stomach up, and now laid out in the grass, feet cocked as if to run, tableau vivant. Sometimes its star nose points east, and sometimes north. Like any poet, Hobo licks a paw, considering. So that's my muse. And now we're going to go down the road just slightly to a place that no longer exists because it was bulldozed down, but you all remember, or many of you do, Leslie Dewey with his flower farm and his son after him. And he appears twice tonight. This is his first appearance. Leslie was a great talker, and it was great fun to stop by if you had an hour or two to spare. He was wonderful. I'll tell you more about him later. No, I'm just going to read the poem. It's The Flower Man. The flower man walks humped, as if his head is too heavy for its stalk. Truth is, he has bent about so much so long he walks the way he works. He banks his place with leaves and winters like a root. A curl of smoke is all. Then the smoke dies back and he's up before skunk cabbage can uncoil. His tractors mutter better news than any gaggle going north. There's always the sign of spring. You heard Mr. Dewey's track. All right. Let's see. All right. I was awfully happy that Dick Davis showed up tonight because I wanted to tell a little story on Dick, although he may say it's apocryphal. And it's, his house is on the corner of where Ferry Lane meets Goodrich. And I walk by there, and things happen. Long exposure for Dick Davis. The end of the year blurs and flickers, a silent film, black and white. But this evening, a corner of the sky is lit as if with strips of colored paper. Some child has cut it up, and the oblong moon's fulfilled across the way, a star above it for good attendance, all very elementary. I'm walking the dog, talking dog with him, when I come upon my neighbor, so unpredictably there's no time to shift from dog. For his part, my neighbor's singing the moon. How high it is, how blue. The moon glows, the dog points. He knows he's in the picture. My neighbor and I are in it too. One of those long exposures where nothing moves. And now a poem for Jesse Case, who is no longer with us except in spirit. He lived in the house where we live, at 21 Goodrich, until the bank foreclosed on it in the 20s. I wrote a poem in which I imagined doing something in our barn, climbing up into the cupola. And I was talking to him one day and said, you know, suppose anybody ever did that? He said, oh, hell yes. I spent a long time up there. So this is in Jesse Case's voice, and it's called The Zenith. We have a terrific cupola. When we first moved in, my first question was, does that bull weather vane go with the house? Because it did. And then people started stealing weather vanes, you know, with helicopters and lowering down about, well, that was 40 years ago. Family of all and so forth had to protect its weather vanes. So, the Zenith, or Jesse Case. Always the tall dark of the barn to hide in. The mattressing alfalfa, timothy, meadow grass. Beyond the hickory stanchions, smooth as well-worked leather from a century and more of cows. Beyond the jerseys, their mouths full of summer, I climb a ladder to the haymow. From there to the cupola, a rope. Like any raccoon, I settle down. It all comes in clearly now. A gabbling of frogs in the swamp, a whippoorwill in the pines, June bugs banging the Coleman, and maybe 50 stations on a Zenith. An old one, shaped like a church, I've resurrected, tube by tube. Wired to the milk shed, grounded well, it brings in the tigers, the Indians, the pirates. One by one, I call them up, in touch with everywhere. That's a sort of a combination poem. Brendan Burns actually is the one who told me when he was down in Florida, he used to have an old radio, and he would bring in all those teams from all over the place. You know, AM travels a long way. So I conflated Brendan with Jesse, but I like to think it's Jesse entirely. Maybe he did bring in the pirates, the Indians, and the tigers. I think he did. Now, back to Mr. Dewey. Behind his what do we call it, place, down the bank, if you've ever canoed the Farmington, you've seen all the old junkers pushed down the bank. I think probably he got a few bucks or something. People deposited their old junkers there. And I think they're still, I was told they're still hanging down in there. And my son and I and my wife were out canoeing one day, and something happened, and I thought I'd better take my wife and myself out of it, just leave my son in it. It's just his view, but this happened. All these things happened, so it's called 12. This is his initiation. Rite de passage. 12 for Robin. A pretty good day. Junk, fish, and a couple of trout. Friendly with muskrat, I drift, I cast at rings, I pass the 58 Chevy with fins, stripped, a place to play, in which I once found other things. What's up around the bed is flowers, and among them, reaching for the sky, legs, some girls, toes curling, nails red, her fur a sight. The boy I forget. And I sent it off to the Atlantic thinking, oh my gosh, this isn't anything they're going to want. Well, they did want it. And I had promised my son that if the Atlantic ever took a poem of mine, I'd buy him an Audi we compromised on a Honda. All right. We have a little Godin coal stove, which we disconnected since because it was impossible to keep going with a bad draft. And it was smoking us out, and we tried many things, and among the others was we tried Mr. Sharples. Sharples, the chimney man, would come to try to do what he could, and wasn't entirely successful, but he was coming back a second time one day, and this is, believe it or not, the literal truth. I have to say that because not everything I write is the literal truth. I'm not sure if Dick really sang that. Did you really sing it? And you all know about Gene Aul's various books, Clan of the Cape Bear. You know, we all we don't tell everybody we like them, but we read them. And the Valley of Horses. The Valley of Horses plays a part in this. And so the poem's called In the Valley. Mold and mildew. Beneath the kitchen sink, long pink and white shoots, beige furred, grow out of the eyes of golds and Idahos. The doorbell is dead. The pipes are bleeding blue in the tubs. The water pump keens. The roof leaks. The whole house is going soft. I take it personally. There is also the business of the light in the upstairs hall where the family is hung. 2 whole rows of framed stiffs coming down the aisle, going off to war. No doubt the fixture I've just installed will overheat like the last one, and with a sizzle and flash leave our forebears in the dark. So it goes. While I wait for Sharples, the chimney man, to return, let me fill you in. A week ago, our little Godin began to smoke us out, but before the coal gas caused total obscurity, Sharples fixed us up with a 5-inch connector and a 9-foot extension that towers over the house like the Newark incinerator and doesn't work. What else but retreat to the Valley of Horses? Better Iowa than the flickering zenith where balding barbershoppers are carrying on crooning, "Kiss me once and kiss me twice." Thank God he's back. Sharples. He inserts a gauge in the stovepipe to register the draft and shakes his head. -2, -6. You have a negative draft, he says. Doesn't make sense, he says. She should draw like a Hoover. And here's the rub. You must be in a natural low-pressure zone. I know it. He kneels before the stove, says it's never happened to him before, pops a pill from a bottle in his socket wrench box, departs, does something on the roof, and reappears. He wads up paper, lights her, and lo, we have to back off before she sucks us in. It seems he has overcorrected. What to do is his business. Mine is Valley of the Horses, where everything is new and works. So far, Isla has invented fire, the wheel, and the beast of burden. Just now, she's about to invent, with the first man she comes upon, but before she can, my daughter walks in with her young man, interruptus, once again. He wants to call somewhere. I tell him to watch the phone jack. It pulls out. How often I have lost my party. You have to click the tab on the jack, he says with the patience of youth. All right, I'm senile. But when I have finished overpaying Sharples, I add it all up. 1 light fixture, illuminating for the moment, a working phone, a coal stove in pink. I can see, I can hear, I can feel, therefore I am. I think I am, though the zenith still flickers. So we grow potatoes, or my grandson does now. He sells organic vegetables. You have to be careful you get the potatoes in
he did this year, got them in before the first hard frost. But if you don't get them in before the first hard frost, they turn hard, then they go soft, then they get hard again, and they're lost. So one year we didn't get them in time, and this is about that. It's called The Digging. It's that time of year. The hedgerows hung with bittersweet potato time. How early the freeze, I'd say, if we were speaking. We are not. We turn our spading forks against the earth. It's stiff. The Reds and Idahos hard as stone, a total loss. Once it was us against the beetles, blight, whatever was not potato. How they flowered, rose and rose in white. Now look, we give it one last try, and there, far down, in softer soil, a seam of them, still perfect. One after another, we hold them up to the dying day, kneel down to sift for more. In the dark of earth, I come upon your hand, you mine. We had a couple of spuds down there under the soil. So,
that's my favorite one, Rennie.
Oh, thank you. I read that at a International Day of Peace, and my thought was that peace begins at home, and then we extend it out to the world. Now in the yard of this house opposite the big barn, a place which Hobo liked to climb up into, was a very large maple which has since gone under, although the remnants are still there. And from this very large maple, which had given up providing sap, it just didn't have any more sap in it, but it was still standing. And from a very large limb hung a tire, which had once upon a time been used to swing in, but which had accumulated dirt, so things were growing in it. And I thought, I knew we were going to have that tree come down, but I thought I'd better do something for it before that time. So this is for that tree. It's also in honor of the coming monsoon season. And so it's appropriate. It's called Riding the Tire. The world's a bog. It has been raining slowly, grimly, for days. A good many things have gone under. If I am still here, as surely as there is life in the gray greens on soggy whole wheat, it's not my idea. The radio comes and goes, announcing lively disasters in foreign parts, and once a steady, high-pitched whine is followed by a tornado alert for Berkshire and Hampshire counties. Never my own. All afternoon I've seen big blue blacks rumble across the north, have seen their distant firing. I do not think they'll fire on me. In such a seep, my going on might as well be a proliferation of cultures in a petri dish. My exit from the softening house merely an absence of any refusal to exit. Without, it's grizzly in the east, all right, neither raining nor not. But westward, how the willows glisten, all those flashy little leaves like swallows banking on the sun. Even the balding tire dangling from the maple is bright, every last statistic showing. From its dirt-filled trough of black-eyed Susan shines. I can do no less, climb in and round it out, higher and higher. I ride the tire. So that's for that tree and that tire. I still have my now 20 or so year old Chevy S10, and I realize it may not be around too much longer, so I need to do something for the Chevy too. So this is for my Chevy S10. I like cars where, nothing is electric. You have to roll the windows yourself, builds muscles. That's called holding on. My Chevy is called Beam. Holding on for Beam, my Chevy S10. She doesn't stop and start the way she used to. There have been issues with her fluids. Her pressure is erratic, too high, too low. Her bushings are worn, her bottom tender where time has been added. She's a bit bionic in her parts, but all the better for it. I am holding on to her for dear life. My God, they don't make it like that anymore. All right, now we get back to Mr. Dewey. One of the lovely things about Mr. Dewey, who I think wasn't keen on holidays or Christmas or whatever, but he used to cover his house in plastic. And so when you came down the road, you'd see, your lights would flicker off, would shine off his plastic red and blue. I think if he'd known that, he would have been mortified. And the house was banked with those leaves I mentioned before. And it was very, very fundamental. And he cooked his dirt all winter. He was sterilizing his dirt. You see smoke coming out from his greenhouses, which were mainly held together by vines. And he was cooking his dirt. And he was a guy. Those junkers down by the river had a purpose. He used one of them, one at a time, to pump up water from the river. So they weren't there for nothing. Some people used them for one thing. He used them for water. Anyway, flower farmer. One other thing. Out in the hall, as you leave, you will see some artifacts, Indian artifacts, just down the hall, and as you turn left there. It's a wonderful display of artifacts from his flower farm. All kinds of, not just arrowheads, but all kinds of axe heads, and he had one other artifact that I mentioned in the poem, and I wonder what has happened to it. It's quite an amazing one. Too big for that case. Flower farmer. Last fall, Mr. Dewey wrapped his house with sheets of plastic. Lit by headlights, it glittered, red and blue. This spring, it lists farther. The shingles flap, and you can hear, he says, the tick of water dripping, termites, beetles, mice. As for his greenhouse, it's held up by vines and sprouts patched stovepipes crookedly. All winter, Mr. D cooked dirt for potting. He's out of sorts today. She's dead, the 57 DeSoto that pumped river to his flowers. Still, it's spring, his dentures sparkle. He's in better shape than that neighbor of his with the heart thing. And there's always the granddaughter. She's a one with glads, a natural with daffs and lips, but a little wild for boys, he's glad to say. Plant her here, she comes up there. Putting in carnations this morning, he found another arrowhead, onyx and ornamental. He looked it up. Asked to see his Indian stuff, he'll ask you in. Old man smell and mildew and dry rot and cat stink and African violets everywhere. Furry as an old man's ears. He has, he says, the Indians cold. Knives, scrapers, axes, mauls. He's proudest of a 3-foot pestle stone, the tip worn smooth. According to the museum man, it was hung from a sapling to pound seeds. He can see it now. She is something. The girl who works the pestle stone. A sapling pulls it up, the maiden pulls it down. Sapling up, maiden down. Grinding lily root. The face of her joy is his granddaughter's face. Mr. D is bent like a tree the pestle stone is done with, but he turns the stone in his hands in love with whatever works. Damn DeSoto. I hope he got another car working. He pumped a lot of water out. Now down, all up and down Ferry Lane in May, early on actually, even in April, especially in April, I think the woodcocks carry on, especially under a full moon. They're supposed to do it only at sunrise and sunset, but I've seen them under a full moon carrying on quite nicely. The woodcock is an ungainly creature. Its head is on backwards. Its brain is where the front of its brain is in the back, and the back is in the front. And it has a beak that is double jointed, better to dig out earthworms. And its head's too big for its body. It's totally awkward. But in the air, it's like Shelley's skylark, you know, that bird thou never wert, of blithe spirit, bird thou never wert. Shelley wrote about those skylarks will rise up out of the grass and go straight up, and then they do a circling courtship dive. Well, the woodcock does the same thing. And it has a wing whistling noise, very much like mourning doves. We're more familiar with mourning doves. That sound you hear that you think is a whistle is actually the sound of their wings. And it's the males, according with that wing whistle. So this is called Good Friday. This particular sighting of the woodcocks did happen on a Good Friday, and it was a full moon. We had another one this year. Full moon on Good Friday is unusual, but it happened again this year. This was a few years ago. And there's a little epigraph from the New York Department of Environmental Conservation, which says, "The woodcock, in essence, has an upside-down brain." It's that rare Good Friday when the moon has come full circle, as other as I have ever seen it. And the night warm enough for Gila. Gila are peepers. And the night warm enough for Gila and wood frogs, humming toads, and the dog star strobing green, blue, red, yellow, with Venus low in the west, huger than usual, Jupiter not bad either, just below her. Here I am between a bog and a moon blue field, wanting you with me to say what I hear is what I hear. Something in the alders like a cut-off kazoo's. Beep, beep. Then the whirring wing warble of a bird's quick takeoff, the moonstruck shine of its sky circling high in the constellated night, and round of chirping before the woodcock spirals wildly down a whistle of wings to ground, then more beat, beat, beat. Like any bird's, my brain is upside down from staring up so long. If such sounds come to me in my problematic state with no one else to hear, does this bird thou never wertness exist at all, or I? In theory I know what it is, who I am, but I doubt my theory. Now a stirring in the alders near the place he landed. She was watching, apparently approves, once more, for he does it again. He is, therefore I am? We'll see. We're in this together, the woodcock, you and I. Beat, beat. RSVP? Thank you. Who was it? Oh, John Stonesi told me he saw one at dawn this year. It was a remarkable sight. In fact, I've never actually seen. I've only seen them by moonlight, and you can hear chirping. They chirp when they circle up above, and I've seen the silhouettes, and I've heard them, but I've never actually seen them. Has anybody in here besides Dave? You have? Oh, I know you. This is squirrels. Squirrels, we have three kinds. We have black and gray and red squirrels. I don't know where the black come from. I understand there's some sort of import from LaGuardia or something. Because the only black squirrel in the country is supposed to be the Cuban squirrel on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. But these squirrels, and I understand they have them over at East Granby and some other places around here. Maybe you have them. know.
When they came in from Stanley Park, they were brought into Stanley Park. They got released accidentally. I think they were brought over from Germany.
The mystery is solved. Well, they're very scenic. Despite the fact that have used every method known to mankind, or childkind or womankind to deter these squirrels. I hate to say it, but I even used a very nasty little pellet gun, but I only hit them in the legs and they limped around horribly, and I gave that up quickly. And then I began to admire them, and the real way to deal with squirrels is to admire their ingenuity. So this is, and my mother took to that admiration. When she was dying, only a couple of months before she died, my wife and I were staying with her, taking care of her, and that was the best time, really, of my life, caring for my mother those last months. And I got her a bird feeder at one point, thinking because she loved the birds. And one day I heard her laughing, and I went in, and it turned out that the squirrels had figured out how to get to the bird feeder. It was next to a lilac bush outside her window, and they were rocking the lilac bush. When it rocked enough, they catapulted, and she was laughing. It was her happiest moment. So I guess I did something right. Anyway, this is called squirrels. Squirrels can twitch the bushy brag of their tails all they want. They are still rats. Gray, red, and black rats. They think the bird seed belongs to them. But they do have their ways. Go high wiring along the clothesline, holding the feeder, and better, after some contemplation, bite the line in half. Bring down the seed. All right, let's raise the bar. I set the feeder on a pole, I grease and baffle it. Wait for them to find a way up. And think of you, Mother. How, while you were waiting to die, you kept an eye on your seed. Watched the squirrels sway the lilac next to it for momentum, then leap to the feeder. How you laughed, preparing for your own crossing over. I think I'm out of order here. I'm going to read a poem about Mark's Auto Parts, which is out on Route 20 on the way to the airport. And maybe you passed Mark's Auto Parts. Mark is many times over a millionaire on scrap metal. And I wrote this poem when I was on my way to find a windshield for an AMC Hornet. You may remember AMC Hornets. And I didn't get the I didn't get the windshield, but I did get out into his lot without a hard hat before I got kicked out, and I got what I needed. And I took it over to Mark a while later and said that there was this poem, and he said, "Oh yeah, I know about that poem. I've seen that. This one had appeared in the Atlantic too. And somebody had given it to him, and he had it hanging on his wall." Yeah, Mark's a good guy. Mark's Auto Parts. This features loose strife. Loose strife has a bad rep. I love loose strife. I know it's invasive and so forth. I think it's a beautiful wildflower. David's going to disagree with me. Mark's Auto Parts. In come the wrecks to Mark's, and out the gear knobs, gas tanks, radiators, speakers, mufflers, bins of parts. The crummiest clunker is worth Mark's while. There's an alley of front ends. Beetles, Buicks, Jags, a 49 Nash, an avenue of chassis, a park of gutted bodies piled on one another like lovers. Everything has a future, all of which is very gratifying, a sign of what we'll amount to in the after-time. The loose strife will take this, frogs that. The earth will value our humus, the cardinal put us to use. Dismantled, we'll go far. All right. I was hoping that maybe David Morse would show up, Joan Jaffe Hall's husband. But I'm going to read this anyway because it's for David, and it's about Pickerel Cove. Pickerel Cove is adjacent to the Salmon Brook, where Salmon Brook flows into the Farmington. There's an oxbow just to the left of Salmon Brook, which is Pickerel Cove. And it's where the river used to flow, but it straightened. It straightened out, and it went straight. That is to say, and so Pickerel Cove is a very primitive place. Big old snapping turtles that have a tendency to do siesta in the afternoon, and they'll let you. I don't really touch them too much with hand, but with a paddle you can scrape the algae. And if you do it very gently, they sort of they seem to like it, and they siesta just below the surface, about an inch below the surface, but the algae is vertical, so you can see it sticking above the water, and they turn very slowly, and you just have to drink your bud and sort of settle in and wait for the bullfrogs to begin again, and then you see the slow turning of the snapping turtles. It's a very wonderful place. It's right behind the Simsbury Airport. There's a kind of indirect reference in here. The Indians called North America Turtle Island because Muskrat dove down. He was the only animal that could do it, but he dove down. He brought up some earth in his paws, and when they opened his paws because he had died in the effort, but he saved the day because he gave a little bit of earth that grew and grew and grew, and Turtle said he would carry it on his back, and so North America rides on the back of the turtle, and it is Turtle Island. Different Indian tribes have different versions of that legend. So, this also mentions the carp. There are great, huge carp back in Pickerel Cove. I mean, I asked a fisherman once how big they grew to, and he said, "Man, they carp so big they drag on the ground behind you." They're not goldfish carp. They're imperial carp. They have a different look altogether. They're enormous fish, and they lie low during the summer. But in the spring, they have a mating ceremony. And I once was lucky enough on an early May morning to be at the opening of Pickerel Cove, and I saw all this water, flying water. I thought it was 100 beaver gone berserk or something. It turned out to be that these were pickerel. These were the carp, the big carp, imperial carp, mating, and so they were going through the water like this, a male next to a female. He was stroking her, getting her to lay her eggs, and then a third would come, another male, and that's when the waterworks occurred. It's huge. Anyway, too much introduction. It's called Pickerel Cove, but it's a magic place. Pickerel Cove for David Morse. Past the local runways with their buzz of Cessnas, beyond the last wind sock, below a steep bank littered with junkers, rusting into the earth and pierced by saplings, curls Pickerel Cove, original coil of the river long since gone straight, backwater home to all the life the river is too busy to accommodate. Ease down the bank, uncover the skiff, use a snag of stricken sycamore for balance, and put in. There's no hurry. This will take time. You are at first a sight for all those little periscopes of lesser painted turtles peering through the scum. Settle in, be patient, become a part of it. Wait for the bullfrogs to resume their song beneath those spires of pickerel weed, the long sigh of heron wings, their soft clap as they're folded in for the stealth of stilt-legged fishing. A sign you are safe as scenery. Now it's time to look for a disturbance of the duckweed, a slow counterclockwise revolution of quilled algae growing on a 2-foot shell basking just below the surface, for which a double-fisted, hook-beaked snout rises backed by a pair of mud-black eyes taking you in. Be still. Let yourself be known, and be ready when the snapper sinks slowly, scrapes the bottom of the boat, raises it like the first world, setting you down different. Don't be surprised to feel yourself lifted again in deeper water at the bend, home to the 3-foot imperial carp that show themselves just once a year, when 2 by 2 they twine, hundreds roiling the river, their copper black bordered scales enormous, the currency of an ancient culture. Their surge will swell the surface invisibly, like the sudden updraft that catches a small plane unawares and tosses it. Reminder, your welcome here is provisional. How are we doing? We have a little more time, maybe? Let's see. I'll go on a little bit more. But then we want a break. Have cookies and stuff. I have written a little, sort of a little opera. It's all in the voices of dogs. And it's called Dogs. And it features a group of dogs who are in a kennel, and the owners have gone away, and they're a Great Dane says we've got to get out of here, and he devises this is the premise of the opera. He devises an idea that is they'll create a show and take it on the road, and each dog will sing his song of myself, and they will croon and sing, and some will be sad and some will be happy, and so these are all the songs, and this is one of them. Some of you may remember Sophie the lab, who liked to her idea. Well, no, I'm not going to say anything, except to say that the Landermans weren't in favor of her because their kids left their soccer balls out in the yard, and what was she to do? So this is in her voice, Sophie the lab, and it's called Rant of Sophie the lab. Retrieve? Forget it. I'll fetch all right, but from there on it's keep away. Truth is, I prefer stealing. It's your fault, kid, you left it in the yard. Your pet soccer ball. I bite it until with a hiss it's thin enough to fit my mouth. I shake it and shake it in case any life is left. I zig, I zag, I stay just out of range. I'm so fetching, my people haven't the heart to wallop me. God knows I deserve it. So it's wonderful to bring, Sophie's gone, and Jesse's gone, and Mr. Dewey's gone, but I think that's one of the lovely things about all kinds of art, poetry among others. We bring them back, they live inside us, and that it's a pleasure to meet them again. I'm going to do. Are you up for 3 more? Yeah, 3 more. Okay. I just have to do this one because one of the great sadnesses is that the monarchs seem to be becoming an endangered species. I didn't see a single monarch. Did anybody see a monarch? Awfully glad. I saw great spangled fritillaries, and for one great moment I thought that was a monarch. But the first year I haven't seen. They used to come to our zinnias all the time. But they live in that one valley in Mexico, and they're an amazing creature with that little quarter-gram of grain of theirs. They've devised a hawk-like method. They ride the thermals, just the way hawks do, and then they glide to the next thermal, and they ride it up, and they glide, and all the way to Mexico. I do miss them, but maybe next year. This is called Visitation. Visitation. I've been anxious all morning, have come outside to sit by the fall flowers, shaggy orange and pink and yellow zinnias, grown tall for the occasion, beside the rough-hewn slats of a barn-bred barn. The day is warming after a touch of frost. The zinnias have made it through, and have a collar, an orange-red black on orange-red black veined wings rimmed with white dots and yellow oblongs. The wings go from flower head to head, landing, shutting, opening slowly, then folding together like supplicant hands, palm to palm, for the long, deep drawing in and rising for delighted swags of dizzy flight up and down the length of the barn before lighting on another zinnia. Perhaps this monarch has no bad dreams. Perhaps every shag of zinnia, every beam of light and shade, every slice of sky is a close relation. Every zig sensational rehearsal for riding to a height from which to glide to the next updraft, all the way to some Mexico ingrained in the body's half-gram of memory. I drink it all in, storing up for the long trip to come. I guess I'm my mother's son. And two more. We have a hand pump in our garden. It's a wonderful thing. The water's down about 10 feet, and every spring I cross myself and think, can I do it again? It's not easy because you have to have an absolute vacuum because it sucks up the water, creates a vacuum, and there's a valve that rises up and the water comes up and the valve goes down and the water stays in there and then you pump it. I'm not always successful in doing this, and I said to my grandson, thinking, well, maybe he can take the blame if it doesn't work. I'll give you the directions and you try it. Our grandson's been living with us for a few years. So this is for him, for William Leverett. It's called Putting in the Hand Pump. The pitcher I refer to as the top part. The pitcher is the part with the handle and the spout. And it's what has to sit on the base, and that you have to have a very tight seal. You got to grease it and tighten it and put in new leathers and so forth. Putting in the hand pump. It's time to reinstall my nemesis, the hand pump. My 20-ish grandson says, no prob, as he follows directions I call problematic. Checks the cup leather, greases the gasket, shuts the backflow valve, sets the pitcher in place, bolts her tighter, primes her with a bucketful, and pumps away, not in the least surprised at the proper sucking sound she makes, pulling a steel tongue in and out of her drop pipe briskly enough for a wheeze of water to rise up from 10 feet down in the underworld. He pumps as if he owns the water, coming in huge gasps. You see? Simple, he says. Perhaps it's only the old for whom so much so seldom works. Only the old who have a proper sense of amazement. It's one of the values of getting older, sense of amazement. And finally, in the house is an old staircase. Actually, Jesse Case worked on that staircase. He took it down so we could get something upstairs and put it back together. I go up and down every morning, and one day I thought that the staircase has a personality. Everything in an old house has a personality, the staircase not least of all. So it's called Hands. So our house was built in 1780, the old part of it. So many generations. I counted. Somebody told me I may have miscounted. There should be more, but I counted 12 wars the house has been through. and they quizzed me about certain wars. Did you think about this and that? But a bunch of wars, and many, many generations. So it's called Hands. Descending from the second story, I steady myself, hand sliding on the handrail, then polishing the knob of the newel. Time has worn away its stain, revealing the rows of earlier days and hints of darker shades below. For over 200 years and 12 wars, such a scoring by hands. In the wash of history, time shrinks. I remember placing my palm on the red ochre print of a hand in a Utah cave, surprised by the almost perfect fit. At the newel, I fit my hand to the backs of other hands that touched its round in passing, hands of lovers ascending, hands of mourners descending, slow hands of the old, quick of the children rushing by, and I feel the hands of those to come, the sad and the joyful taking their turns, their palms brushing the back of my hand where it rests on the newel.